In trading, knowledge is power, and lack of knowledge in what you're doing can be costly, very costly. So you need a solid foundation of quality market education. Whether you're new to trading or a seasoned veteran looking to add advanced strategies to your arsenal, there's always something to learn and something to improve on. And now you can access the same knowledge that professional traders receive with Market Rebellion's Trading Education. I'm Bill Johnson, Head of Options Education here at Market Rebellion, and we've assembled a comprehensive curriculum based on decades of real trading experience, covering everything you need to know about trading options from beginner to advanced. We go way beyond the nuts and bolts of options theory to teach you how to apply specific trading strategies and the techniques needed to adapt your trades when markets shift. Regardless of your goals, you'll gain access to the education you need with easy-to-consume lessons so you can learn to trade with confidence, enhance your knowledge, and master the practical skills required for market success. So please join us for in-depth trading education only from Market Rebellion. Good afternoon once again, Market Rebels, and it's that time again. Actually, Stu, it's not. My days are off. I think today's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
I know we're normally, for everybody who might be new to the channel here, we do this on Thursday at 4, but for some business webinar marketing reasons, we had to, every once in a while we have to do that, move it to Wednesday. So just so you know that normally we're on Thursday, but it is time for Coach's Corner. And what we like to do here is to bring you the tips and tricks of the professionals, things that you're probably not going to find anywhere else. Of course, we have Stu with us every single time. Stu, 30 years almost on Philadelphia floor as a market maker, specialist, our desks, everything. He's done it all. Yeah. He's here to share a lot of those secrets. Every once in a while we have Scotty join us. So anyway, that's our purpose here, is to help everybody out there understand options a little bit better. So today, Stu, I've got a challenging question for you.
Aren't they all challenging?
I know you're always up for the challenge, but for everybody out there in YouTube land, we're going to start off with our Chalk Talk question, which is our little thought-provoking question, which we will answer at the end. A little more vague than we usually do, but what's the connection between condors and butterflies? So there's two these are different types of spreads. There are condor spreads or there's actually lots of them, but condors and butterflies are probably two of the more exotic ones, but there's a connection between them. Actually, there's lots of connections, but there's one we're going to explore here specifically with condors and butterflies. So Stu, I know that you at least have a feeling where we're going with this. And what
I would say these are brothers from another mother. I mean,
that's a good way to put it.
These are kissing cousins. They're almost the same.
Yes, and we're going to find out. Again, there's lots of connections, but more importantly, kind of in the second half of this presentation, once you understand these connections, you will see new ways to trade. We're going to show you a very cool morph.
Make adjustments.
Yeah, exactly. Adjustments, whatever you want to call them, that traders miss.
Yeah.
And we find that this becomes so costly. People will open up a condor, it goes against them, and they say, well, let me close it and move on. And they don't realize the purpose for putting it on is to stay in the position but do adjustments as things change. And these things could be volatility, it could be time, lots of things can change.
Or we get that question, I got out and, it went more my way. So like, can you tell me when to get out? When should I sell it?
Right. Or should I get back in? Right. You're like, you could have done this.
When you can understand like how this is working and the mechanics of like what's inside what, you can make these adjustments. Just you do it on the fly because you know the product and you can do it on the fly and you get to kind of, stay in and suck some more dollars out of it. or lose less, whichever the case may be. But this is a way to just make these adjustments along the way if you get the connection between what's going on here.
Right. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do a little investigation into this connection between condors and butterflies, and then we're going to find out a use, one of many uses, just to kind of whet your appetite for how powerful options can be. So here we go. Topic is hedging condors with butterflies. Now, Stu said adjusting, morphing, hedging. They're all different reasons why we might do some type of an adjustment. But in this case, I'm just going to show that calling it a hedge. Yeah, but that's what we're looking at here. So let's start off with butterflies. We're going to talk very briefly about these two different spreads in case you're unfamiliar with them. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to follow the presentation. So a long butterfly spread, meaning that you've purchased it, we have to use the same type of options. There are only two types of options, calls and puts. Now, there are variations, but this is the textbook standard plain vanilla long butterfly spread. It's going to be all calls or all puts. They're going to have the same expirations, and they are created by using three strikes, which I'm going to generically call low, medium, and high. What you're going to do is to buy one low strike, sell two of the medium strike or the middle one, and then buy one high strike. Now again, for the plain textbook standard long butterfly, the strikes are going to be equally spaced. So 100, 105, 110, things like that. They don't have to be. That's when we get into things that are called broken wing butterflies or broken wing condors. But again, we're just talking about a very basic butterfly. Now, so the thing you want to focus on is this 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. You're long the first strike, short 2 in the center, and long 1. So for instance, let's say that you buy one March 95 call, that's our low strike. You sell two March 100 calls, you buy one March 105 call. Same expiration, all calls, equally spaced, 95, 100, 105, and in this 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. Now, if we had two butterflies, what would they be? That'd be 2, 4, 2. If you had 10 butterflies, it'd be 10, 20, 10. That's what it means in a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. So this is just one butterfly spread. So if we were to put this on our platform, this is what we would get. Actually, this is a 45, 50, 55 butterfly, but this is the same shape. So this is the example I'm going to use mostly throughout the presentation. But you see how it's got this upside down V, and then we've got these flattened wings. And this is, kind of curiously, why they call it a butterfly. So Stu, you kind of have to stand back and squint, but this is supposed to be the body right here in the center, and then these are the wings. So could have called it a number of flying creatures, but it actually falls into a category more generically of what are called wing spreads. So you get into the butterflies, the condors, albatrosses, pterodactyls, all kinds of things. They are all essentially the same strategy. But so if you want to really call them more generically, it's one of many types of wing spreads. Okay, so that's going to be your basic shape. Now let's look at a condor. Long condor means that you buy it. Now these are going to be using 4 strikes. Again, all calls or all puts with the same expiration. Now there are combinations that we can do with calls or puts, same with the butterfly. That's when we get into what are called the iron versions. So I just wanted to at least throw that out there if you're wondering why I'm saying that they have to be all calls or all puts. That's not 100% true. It's true if you're talking about the basic textbook version. But we can create
when
them.
Bill's talking about when you hear anybody talking about the iron part of this, the iron just means puts and calls.
Calls and puts. And why can we do that, Stu? Because calls are puts are calls. Because so it should make sense. If we can create them with all calls, we can create them with all puts, and we can also create them with combinations.
You're not talking about synthetics, are you, Bill?
I think that's exactly what we were talking about without trying to use the word. That's exactly it. Okay. So with our condor, again, for the basic one, strikes will be equally spaced, but now they're going to be in a 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 ratio with the interior strikes being short and the wings being long. So let's say that you buy one May 45 call, sell a May 50, sell a May 55, and buy a May 60. Same type, all calls, same expiration, equally spaced, all 5 points apart. Now again, that doesn't mean they have to be 5 points apart. They could be 40, 50, 60, 70. They just have to have equal spacing. But now we've got our shorts in the center and we're long in the wings. So anyway, that's a condor. So conceptually, here's what's happening. Our butterfly, we have a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. And with a
Oh,
condor,
can we do a quick T here? Can you go
sure.
back one slide?
Mhm.
So everybody, when you're watching this, take a look at what Bill has in front of you here. He's got buy one, sell one, buy one. If you just take a moment to just think about what you're looking at and look at it, what you're going to see is two vertical spreads.
We're
You
going to
got to
get to
look.
that. I knew you'd see that.
Oh,
Yep.
you're going to get there. All
Oh,
right.
yeah.
What you that's all it is, right? It's not complicated. It's just two vertical spreads, and they put it
Correct.
together and they call it a funky
And then
name, and
they give it a whole fancy, a whole completely different name.
and like great chapters about how to do it and what it is. But
Right.
like Bill said at the beginning, there's just calls and there's just puts.
That's right. Yeah.
And they're each going to do what they're each going to do, and you put them in tandem, and it's a net effect, and that's all this is. It's not complicated. It's just
Yeah.
the movement of an option that has a different delta and a different gamma, and the net effect is what you get at the end. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
And I
Sorry,
think
man.
that's an important point is to recognize, is to be able to break them down. Ryan and I used to go to a Mexican restaurant near here when he'd come up here to record. And we kind of said, this is in a lot of ways like option strategies because you'd look on the menu. These menus are a mile long and it would have exactly the same ingredients and they would fold it over and it would be called a taco. And then they open it up and they call it a tostada. And he asks the waitress, what's the difference? They go, oh, they're exactly the same. One's just open, one's folded. You're like, really? And it gets a whole different name for that. And it's kind of the same thing here. And I think that's what
Yeah,
throws traders.
yeah.
All it is two vertical spreads. Done.
Just the vertical spreads.
That's
That's
all
it.
it is.
No biggie. No biggie.
Yep. So let's look at the ratios again on our butterfly. Now, what we're doing with the condor is we're going to split these. All right. So remember, we've got long, short, long. We have a net contract exposure of 0. This is another little trick when you start getting into the more complex strategies is because sometimes traders will say, hey, wait a minute, I'm short 2 options. Do I have unlimited risk somewhere? Well, add them all up. The wings add up to +2. Remember, this is -2 in the center. So on a net basis, you have 0.
This is actually really important. This was a thing. This was a parameter that we looked at as floor traders all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
What is our net contract
Net
exposure?
contract exposure.
Yeah. Sometimes it was minus, and we
right.
knew it, right? I mean, and that's what we dealt with. I mean, we dealt with the risk, but we had to know it. What was your net contract exposure? Sometimes it was long, sometimes it was flat, and sometimes it was 0. But it was a really important number because it really kind of dictated, what your risk. If it was negative, for sure, what your risk.
Right. You've got some net short contracts.
What your risk could be on the wings, which was really kind of a misnomer because if you got that position on, it's really undefined. But it gave you an idea of where you are. It was a very important number. It's something that you should always look at.
Oh, yeah. So what does that tell you? Net contract exposure of 0. What that tells me if the stock rockets to the moon or plummets to 0, there's not really any additional risk. Now, that's not saying we're flat across the board. We'll have some deltas in between these strikes.
Sure.
But in the extremes, it's as if I own 0 contracts.
Yeah. Like,
now,
if the stock goes like all the way, skyrockets, we're talking calls here, I guess. If it's, they're all going to go to parity, right? There won't be any deltas left.
Right.
Everything will be parity option and every spread will be, to its max. And then like Bill says on the other side, right? If stock falls out of bed, everything's going to go to 0.
Going to go to 0.
Right. And it'll be 0 again.
So just kind of, if you have any fears about that, it's a nice little check you can do that we can see that the net contract exposure is 0. Now, if we go to we look at our butterfly, if we go to a condor, what we're doing is we're really just splitting out this center. Instead of saying I'm going to be short 2 at a single strike, I'm going to be short 1 at 2 different strikes. And that's why we're getting 4 different strikes in here. But notice we still have a net contract exposure of 0. +2 out here, 1 + 1, and then I'm short 2. So there's no hidden risk in here. On a net basis, we have no exposure. So here's our butterfly, and here is our condor. And you can see that now it's starting to look a little strange. We have this flat top across here.
Which
Like
is the
somebody took
t-shirt.
this one and just took a pair of scissors and lopped it off the top, and that's because we have two different strikes. So remember that we always get a bend at a strike. So we can see we've got 40, 45, 55, and 60. I can tell that's a 40, 45, 55, 60 condor. That's how we would name it. We would just list those strikes. So let's take a look at our butterfly and say, let's say that the stock is maybe 52 and a half. All right, this is getting into why we might choose a condor over a butterfly. So if the stock is 50, sure, I might choose the butterfly because I've got a strike right there at the center. What if the stock is 52 and a half? Now, if we have 52 and a half strikes, I could do a 52 and a half butterfly, make that my center strike. But if we only have $5 increments, what does this do for us here, Stu? We've got a lean going on, don't we?
We do have a lean. Yeah. And we may want to take care of that lean.
We're sitting here on you see how this line right here is leaning to the left? Those are negative deltas, behaving like short shares of stock. So if all I know is a butterfly and I put on the 50 butterfly, or you could call it the 45, 50, 55. Some traders just name it by the body. So if we call it the 50 butterfly, I've got a negative lean. If I do the 55 butterfly, I'm going to have a positive lean, a bullish lean. Well, I might not want that. I might want to start it dead center. So what could I do? We widen out the strikes. And now look what it does to my stock. Puts it right into the center. So that's not the only reason for using a condor, but it's probably the primary one. It's just that we simply don't have a strike that we can center up on. So we split them. Now also keep in mind, what's going to happen to our cost here? Still, we've got a higher probability of making money. People are going to do what?
Well, they're going to want to take, go ahead.
They're going to want to bid that price higher.
Yeah, it's going to go higher. Right? There's always a connection, everyone, right?
There's always a connection. So you might look at this and go, hey, wait a minute. I just got a bright idea. I'll sell the 30 and I'll sell the 70 and I'll put this super wide area so that the stock has no chance of getting out and I've got a 100% chance of profit. Well, maybe, but what's going to happen to that risk graph? It's going to sink down to the risk-free rate. So the higher the probability for success, in other words, the more distance you put between these center strikes, the more you're going to pay, and therefore the lower the reward. Just a risk-reward connection. So the moral of that story is condors are not better. They're tools. They're not worse. Don't let somebody tell you a condor is better because it's got a higher probability of making money. It comes at an expense. All right, so all things equal, if we do have the stock at 50, this is what the pricing might look like. Butterfly can lose less, and it can make more. That doesn't mean it's better. It costs less because it's riskier. People are bidding down the price. Condor, we have a better chance of making money. All things equal, that's better. So people push up the price, and that's why we can lose more and make less.
It's a really important note.
Absolutely.
Everyone. Right, you got to remember, price balances out all.
Absolutely.
All this,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the extreme is the T-bill. Super far out of the money is like kind of the other side of it.
Yep. Right? Super cheap, big rewards. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Risk. We talk about that a lot, right? Risk reward. But a lot of people kind of think about, well, it's always an equal balance of whether you're going to win or whether you're going to lose, and that is absolutely untrue.
No, it's not. And the price is what equalizes it. We often talk about in our Q&A, it's like a point spread in a football bet. It's very rare that the crowd feels that both teams are exactly equal.
Yeah,
I guess it does happen, but it's rare. So how would anybody ever want to bet on the underdog? Well, the only way you're going to form a market is to create a balancing point, and they do that with a point spread. In the options market, that's done by dollars and cents.
Price.
By the price. All right, so that's our little overview of butterflies and condors. Before we take the next step, please remember marketrebellion.com/get started for lots of great tutorials, articles, videos on topics just like this. So now let's take a look at some alternate views. This is one of my favorite topics. As Stu said earlier, they're just two vertical spreads. But because we have two vertical spreads, we also get more combinations of things that we can see, what we might call synthetic alternatives. And once you learn to see that, now we have many ways that we can hedge, morph, roll, create different trades because we have different ways of looking at it. So condors are created by placing a bull and a bear spread. That's what Stu just said. But we could also look at them as two strangles.
Yeah, it's the same position.
It's the same position. So watch this. There's the four calls that we saw before. There's our condor. So let's take this top half, just separate them out. We'll take the bottom half. Right here is a what? Bull spread. And right there is a bear spread. So that's one way to look at a condor, is to say that it's just two vertical spreads. This would be a debit spread. This would be a credit spread. Another way of looking at it. Long and short. But let's do this. Let's put them in a table here. Here's our strikes. If we're long the 45 and short the 50, and then we skip over one and we're short the 55 and long the 60, this would be a short, if we're using calls, that would be a short spread. So if you did both of these in your account, you're long the 45.50 and you're short the 55.60, but let's sum them up vertically. What do you have on a net basis? Well, we have 145, one short at 50, one short at 55, one long at 60, and look at that. 1 minus 1 minus 1, 1. There's your condor. So is it really a condor? It's just a name. It's just two vertical spreads.
It's just a name. You
It's
can look at that.
It's just a name.
Say, I'm long the wings, right? The 45,
You're
60.
long the wings, right?
And you're short the body inside, right? I mean,
That's
it's
right.
just you're short the strangle and you're long the strangle.
Yeah. In fact, a little side note, that's the way a lot of professional traders will refer to it. So we make sure we're talking about the same thing. We're not going to talk about the short iron condor here, but the short iron would be a short position. This is the long position, and yet they produce the same risk graph.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say that I'm short or that I'm long? See, now it starts to get confusing. So if Stu and I were talking about it, we'd say, are we long the wings or short the wings? Now it doesn't matter if we're talking about short irons or longs. We just know that we're long the wings. So that's kind of another little inside thing that professional traders will do. We're long the wings. Now we know that we have exactly the same risk graphs. Okay, so that's one way to look at our condors. What else can we do, though? Here's where things start to get really interesting. What if we bought the 45, 50, 55 butterfly? There's our 1 to 2 to 1 ratio. We skip over a strike and we buy the 50, 55, 60. 1, negative 2, 1. So if you bought the 50 butterfly and then bought the 55 butterfly, what do you have on a net basis? Well, look, let's sum them up vertically. You've got 1 at 45, but here you've got minus 2 plus 1, which is negative 1. Here you've got 1 and negative 2, which is negative 1, and here you've got 1, and look at that. We're right back to our condor. See, now my head's really starting to hurt. I'm going, man, we could look at these as vertical spreads. We could look at them as butterflies. We can look at them as strangles wrapped by other strangles. There's all kinds of ways we can see them. So there it is. It's just two butterflies. And that's something.
So and this is where I hear people say, oh my God, I'm drinking from a fire hose and I can't understand it. And it's just overwhelming. And it's just keep it simple. Keep it easy. Keep it simple. Just keep everything in perspective of what it is that you're looking at. No matter how you spin this, it's always going to come out to be the same thing.
Exactly.
Call it or how you look at it, or it's the strangles on the inside, the strangles, long strangles on the outside. That you want to call it the two verticals, you want to call it the condor. Look, just don't get overwhelmed with it. It just is what it is, and this is all it is, right? No matter how you spin it, this is what it is.
Just calls and puts.
Yeah.
So let's go back to our strangle. This is our risk graph. Let's look at some max gains, losses, and break evens. Let's say we paid $3 for this guy. What's our maximum gain? Now, we all know that traders love to say, well, what's the formula? And Stu and I never teach formulas. In fact, I don't even know the formulas. If I have to do a class, I might have to say, well, what would the formula be? And I
Yeah.
work backwards into it because I can tell you if you try to memorize this stuff, you're going to forget. So here's the thing. If we understand that they are two vertical spreads, a 45, 40, 45, what's the most a $5 spread can be worth? Five.
Hmm. Do I need
If
my
we paid,
calculator? Get that out. Hold on.
if we paid three, maximum gain is two. Now, what's the break even? Well, I could see it's somewhere between 40 and 45. That's where this black line crosses zero.
How
So
do
think
you
about
get your
this.
$3? That think about that. How do you get the $3? That's all break even is. I paid three. How can I break even? How can I get my money out of it?
How do I get my money out of it? So the way that
And
I like to look at it visually, here's the bend at 40. Which way do you have to walk to get to the break even? To the right. That means we have to add. Add what? Well, this is delta 1. We have to add 3. So it's 40 plus 3 is 43. And then over here, there's my bend at 60. I have to walk left to get to the break even, which means we have to subtract. So 60 minus 3 is 57. However, we can look at this synthetically. It's just a picture. It doesn't know if it was purchased for 3 or sold for 2. So couldn't I pretend that this is a $2 credit? If I start from the 45 bend, I have to walk left to get to break even by 2 points. What's 45 minus 2? Whoa, look at that, 43. Or if I start at the 55 bend, I have to walk right by 2. I can get 55 plus 2 is 57. See, there's lots of ways to get the numbers. I don't pick a formula. I don't care. There's lots of them.
But hold on, man. But I mean, I hear this all the time. I want to do the credit spread because I'm getting
right.
It's like I can't even say it,
So tell me. So here's a good question, Stu. Here's a picture. Is this a credit spread? Was this a short iron condor or was it a long?
Yes. How's that?
He doesn't know. Now, if I told him they were calls and puts, he could figure it out. But if I just showed him the picture, you don't know.
Doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. So
I don't care.
So don't worry and say, "Oh man, is it a debit? Is it long?
Where is the stock? What did I pay for it? What is
what's the risk-free interest rate?" Right. It's just that if their maximum loss is 3, we know that that's 2. Now, sometimes people say, "Well, wait a minute. If you have two vertical spreads, how come the max gain is 5?" Well, remember the one on the left is a debit spread if we're talking about calls. So if the stock is up here at 45 or above, that spread is worth 5. But the spread on the right, the 55.60, is a credit spread. What's it worth? It's worth 0.
Well, yeah.
Now we've got 5 plus 0. The entire spread is worth 5, not 10. Some people say, well, there's two vertical spreads. It's got to be worth 10. Nope.
No.
Both spreads are worth their maximum. That's why we're at the maximum gain. Now, what if we're down here? Well, your debit spread, you paid 3. Your debit spread is worth 0. What's your credit spread worth? Good question. Minus 5. Remember, it's a liability. So down on this end, the entire spread is worth minus 5. All right. And so if we said, well, if we got a 2 credit and we lost 5, then it's minus 3.
It's kind of a weird way to look at it. But look, it makes sense. Just follow the money. I say it all the time.
Yeah.
Follow the money. Minus 5 can get a little confusing to when you start netting the positive and negative. If you just keep it simple, like super, super, super simple, and say if the stock is down there, wherever down there is, like under 40, is the 55.60? They're 0, aren't they?
They're 0. They're worthless.
Hey, they're out of the money. Oh my God!
Right. We paid $3 for the Condor, so I know I lost 3. Right?
It's 0.
So we know it's 0. Yep. So anyway, those are some ways to kind of see why it's a $5 Condor. Some people say, well, wait a minute, it's 40 and 60. It's a $20 Condor. No, it's not. It's a $5 Condor because you have two $5 spreads. But the reason they don't grow to 10 is because one is debit and one is credit.
And another thing that we talk about, Bill, is when we do the debit spread, we talk about it as kind of like an asset that can grow
in value. Yep.
Whereas the credit spread is a liability, right?
You can only lose you 5. Yep.
To take the liability, right?
Cannot ever make you a single dime other than the credit you receive. The spread itself is a $5 liability.
It's a liability. So if you're getting pay two for a $5 liability, I guess you can lose three,
You can lose three. Lots of ways
right?
to look at it. So again, if somebody says, what's the formula for it?
I don't know.
I don't know. I could come up with a lot of them. Which one do you want? See, and that's why traders get confused. And I think some traders look at the formula in the book and they say, but I don't see it that way, but I must be looking at it wrong because it's not the formula in the book. There's lots of them. Just look at the picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the overviews. Before we take our next step and look at some cool hedges, remember marketrebellion.com/get started. Now for the good stuff, Stu. That was kind of actually the warm up for the.
Yeah, now this is going to be cool. I'm not even sure exactly what Bill's going to put up here. I actually haven't seen this yet, but I know that this is going to be. I know where he's going, and it's going to be really
Yeah,
cool. So
you know it's going to be one of these. So here's a type of what we call follow-up actions. Again, you could call it a morph, a hedge, some type of a roll. There's a lot of different terms you could call it. But the point of this whole thing is that this is one of many. Why? Well, we just saw there's many formulas. There's many ways to look at. Do you want to look at it as vertical spreads? Do you want to see it as butterflies? Do you want to see it as a short strangle and a long strangle? There's a lot of ways we can look at it. And when your eyes start to open up to those possibilities, now you'll see lots of ways to trade other than like, the stock went against me, let me close it and move on.
and you know, and your Greeks can kind of help you with that.
Yes, I can.
They you know, your Greeks tell a story. It's like your dashboard on your car. You know, you go in 30 or you go in 60. How, are you accelerating? What's your tack look like? You know, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, your Greeks can tell you if you're picking up delta, right?
Sure.
That could be a tell for you. Maybe, I'm
Absolutely.
picking up delta. I went from this delta to that delta. I'm getting a bigger delta. Do I really want a bigger delta? The stock moved and it kind of did what I wanted it to do, and I got a bigger delta. Well, maybe I should lower the delta.
Yeah.
Just something to think about as a purveyor of what do I have now as opposed to what did I have then, which changed. And that's the dynamic that people kind of forget about also. Like what you had is not necessarily what you have now.
Yep. So let's take a look at our Condor again. 45, 50, 60, 65. I can tell that from the bends. Let's say the stock price is right here. We put it with the stock price centered. So what happens? Is the stock going to sit exactly still? Probably not. Now, before I show you this, let me give a word of caution. Just because the stock moves from 55 to 56 does not mean you do what I'm about to show you. People over abuse this and say, oh, I need to go hedge it. No, you don't. You need to let these things sit for a while and kind of show you that they are definitely moving beyond one of these strikes. But hypothetically, let's say that our stock has now come up here and it's threatening this 60 strike. Now, for me, I wait until it gets beyond it. It's kind of a way to say, prove it to me, because a lot of times they'll reverse. But again, for whatever reason, it's gotten up to this 60 strike, maybe beyond. What can we do? Most traders shut it down. Well, let's take a look. What would I like to do here, Stu? If I could maybe picture taking a knife and cutting this spread in half, I'd like to shift it out.
You'd like to go that.
If I could put this bend at 65 and maybe make this bend at 70, I'm just taking this right half of the graph and sliding it right. Well, that would be a type of morph. What would I do? Well, I'd need to buy back the 60. I'd need to sell the 65. Then I would need to sell the 65 again to make it long, and then buy the 70. So as a trader, all I'm going to look at is these 3 points. 1, 2, and whichever one is next. 60, 65, 70. So what are we going to do there, and what is that trade? Well, let's break them apart. If we buy the 60 and sell the 65, that was the first one. And then we sold the 65 and then bought the 70. Look what we did. Let's pull this one over to the right. That's buying the 60. What did we do here in the center? Sold 2 65s. What do we do here on the right wing? Bought the 70. What is this right here, Stu?
I think it's called a butterfly.
Looks like a butterfly to me. So all you have to do is buy the butterfly. Wait a minute. How can you buy a butterfly when you're trading condors? Because that's all a condor is. It's in disguise.
Yeah.
Okay. So If we are here and I buy the 60, 65, 70 butterfly, I go into my broker's platform, buy the butterfly, what's going to happen to this risk graph? It does that. It gets shifted to the right, exactly what I wanted. But now I might say, you know what? I'd like to finance this somehow. I don't want to keep spending these debits on it because that technically is going to shift this lower. Well, now here's the way that I like to think about it. So, Stu, are we running away from the risk in this case, or are we running towards it?
Looks like, well, when you shift it to the right, you're running towards it.
No, the risk is here. The stock price is risking it. We're moving
Right.
away from
You're
the
running
risk.
away from
We're running
the top
away
right,
from
yeah.
the risk. Is the market going to
Yes.
pay you a credit for running away from something?
No.
No, you have to pay for it. So that's a very quick way to intuitively tell I have to buy the butterfly. Because sometimes traders go, gee, do I sell the butterfly or do I buy it? You have to buy it. But now look at this side over here, Stu. If we're running towards the fire, if we do the same thing with these strikes and shift them to the right, we're moving closer to the risk. And the market will pay you for that. So I could sell the butterfly and do exactly the same thing on the left. So watch this, 45, 50, 55. I need to sell my 45, buy back the 50. Then I need to sell the 55 and buy the 50. Okay? And so what that's going to do is it's going to, there's the first one, buy the 50, sell the 55. There's sell the 45, buy two of the 50s. There's the sell 55. And what is that? There's your short butterfly. So all I have to do is to go into my broker's platform and sell the 40, just follow the bends, 45, 50, and the next one. I know it's a sell because I'm moving towards the risk. I can look at that and tell, sell the 45, 50, 55 butterfly. It's that fast. We sell it for a credit, which more or less offsets this. And what happens to my risk graph over here? It now gets shifted right. And where is it? Centered with the stock price.
So what did you do here, everyone? You just recentered the whole thing.
We just recentered the graph.
And the methodology was to use a fly strategy.
Yep.
Just a fly mechanic.
Yeah.
To recenter the condor.
Could we have done it with two vertical spreads? That's exactly what we did. We just put them in as one order and called it a butterfly. I could have done two separate vertical spreads. It would have been slower. It's not as efficient, but I could have.
Taken on some execution risk.
Take on some execution risk, other things. But I'm saying mathematically, we could. Because I can see it as vertical spreads. I can see it as butterflies. Lots of different ways I can see it. So as Stu said, well, if you can see that black curve has just been shifted to the right for more or less, maybe a slight debit, maybe a slight credit, rarely a net zero. But it's a way of recentering. But remember that time has gone by. That stock didn't move from 55 to almost 60 overnight. It might have been a week or two. So now we're starting to see our Condor starting to appreciate. We're saying, okay, stock, you kind of threatened me the first time. Try it again. I'll give you another week or 10 days. And so it's just a way to show that you don't have to close a position just because things have moved against you. If you understand how to hedge, roll, and morph, but to make that work, you have to understand how to see the strategies. And most of the time, they're a lot simpler than people think. So anyway, that's really it. Now remember, that's one. We might even we could do a whole series on different hedges, rolls, and morphs just with condors because there's a lot of them. But we want to at least open your eyes to that because it's something that you're probably not going to see anywhere else. And this is really what makes trading fun and profitable.
Yeah, don't fixate on the oh, it's a condor and a butterfly. What did they say?
Right.
How do I? It's not really about that. Like
No.
we had a client in Q&A last night. Remember him? Yeah, whose name? Alfred. Might have been Alfred. I don't know, maybe. Who said, I have this option, I have this call. How do I'll make the numbers up. It was like 100 strike. How do I turn it into a 110, 120 vertical? Well, what I said to him was like, look, just figure out figure out where you want to be at the end,
Yeah. And what do you have to do?
and what do you have to do to get there.
Right.
Right? There's a couple different. There's several ways to get there. I said, well, just maybe roll up the 100 to the 110 and then lay a 120 on top of it, and you'll have what you want. I mean, you could just sell the 100 and then do the 110, 120. I
Lots of
mean,
ways. Yep.
there's
Yep.
lots of ways to do it. Just kind of figure out what you really want it to look like, and
Yeah.
then and then
And work
and
it
then
backwards. Yeah.
work it backwards, and
That's
kind of
kind of
back.
what I did in those pictures. I said, here's visually that we want to shift it right. What were the trades that got us there?
Yeah,
And then you say, okay, oh my gosh, it just happened to be a butterfly. And you might stumble on it and discover that. Doesn't matter what it's called. It's
yeah,
where do you want to be? What do you have to do to get there?
right, exactly.
So mathematically, think of this as a simple example. If you have one and you're trying to get to three, how do you get there? Well, I could add two. I could add one and one. There's lots of things I could do. I'd say, where am I now? Where am I trying to get? What are the trades that gets me there? And if you do that, you'll find out there's lots of ways to do it.
Mhm.
So these are some of the things we like to teach people in Q&A. If you're not part of our Market Rebellion Q&A, please check out, give us a call. You can find our number at the website there. Talk to one of the salespeople. We'd love to have you. So the question here, Stu, what's the connection? I told you it was kind of vague. Connection between condors and butterflies. What did you come up with?
Well, you can use the butterfly strategy to adjust the condor.
That was primarily what I was looking at here, that it's a series of butterflies. But we could also say it's what? Vertical spreads. If it's the iron version, we could look at them as strangles. Or two credit spreads. We could say it's a call spread and a put credit spread. You're like, oh my gosh, there's all kinds of ways we can see it. But when you
Yeah,
put it in a
and
box and call it a
that
condor, people think it's something completely separately, and it's just not.
yeah, and if Bill's got a great point. A butterfly. It sounds cool. It sounds funky. It sounds oh my, exotic. Like I think
Right.
that was the word used. It's the point is just the point of it on the butterfly. Like that. The point of it's like you think about it. You just short the strike.
That's all
And
it
that's
is.
where the money is, right? So if the stock goes to the strike and the extrinsic value goes to zero, you make all the money. But then you got to think about the price, and you got to think about what's the probability of the stock landing where right at the tip at 4 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern Standard Time on expiration. It's like zero. It's like
It's not gonna happen.
it's that sexy draw of, oh, I can pay $1 to make 9. Well, what's the probability? Like Bill says, what's the price and what's the probability, and you kind of put them together. You can see like it's a low price because it's a low probability.
Yeah.
But
We-
look, that's kind of another story.
And I know that we have a lot of traders who will say this, and maybe you've fallen out there too in YouTube land. They'll say, oh, I want to learn how to trade butterflies because somebody told me this, that, or the other. And I kind of get this deer in a headlight look, and I go, oh, and they go, well, what, you don't like them? I said, well, it's not that I like them. I don't dislike them. I said, why do you think that butterflies are special? Oh, well, somebody told me they are. Well, do you think that same way about vertical spreads? Well, no. All right, well, that's all it is. And if they say, yes, I think that about vertical spreads, do you think that about calls and puts? Well, not really. Well, a vertical spread is just calls and puts. One's long, one's short. So if they're not real special, and now you're taking two vertical spreads that you don't see as special and putting them together, why does it suddenly become special? Because we give it a name. You have to think, what is it you're trying to do? What's your goal? Then we can move forward. But if you're one of these people that says, let me explore some different strategies so I can find the one that makes all the money in the world for no risk, and I'll bet the answer lies in here because these are some pretty cool sounding names, you're going about it the wrong way. We always have to balance it with price. So hopefully it gives you some good things to think about. We appreciate you joining us here for Coach's Corner. Stu, we got to get Scotty on next week if we can.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him on the horn, and hopefully he can join us next week. But we'll try to bring more of these to you in the future and different ways of looking at hedges, rolls, and morphs. We hope this helps you for now. We'll see you next Thursday on Coach's Corner. We'll see you then.